Because it's times like these, with so much I fear. Nights like these, we'll remember those stupid jokes.
It's cold in here, isn't it? How are you? You okay?
Right, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Oh, yeah, it's cool here though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all right,
Yeah, something different.
How are you?
I'm all right, yeah, I'm
Yeah?
all right.
Yeah?
It's just pretty fucking manic at the moment.
I
but
can,
I'm good,
I
I'm
can
good,
imagine,
really
yeah.
good. But yeah, all's good. Just didn't have a break between this and tour, so I can just feel it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
it'll get you at some point.
I've had album for ages, so it's just, this is a nice time, it's nice. Now I'm finally gearing up to release, because it feels like I've had it for the longest time.
Yeah. Congratulations though,
Thank you.
on the album. Phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel really good about it. I definitely feel a lot better this time round. Almost like whatever happens, like, because the first record I was kind of just chasing what I thought I needed to do.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, you know, regardless of how it does really, I feel like it sums me up as an artist, so it's kind of, it's better that way around. I've taken a bit of pressure off myself just by following my art, do you know what I mean?
I think people in the music world always talk about the difficult second album, but from listening to it, that hasn't been the case for you, has it? It feels like you've kind of found your confidence, you've cemented your sound really, and you've kind of stretched it a little bit sonically and musically as well. Yeah,
well that is something that I was aware of going into this second record. Obviously people often talk about that second record and, you know, how it can be challenging. But I think where it was different for me was, it almost came the way around. Because I come out of One Direction and made all those albums with them, my first record almost felt like the second record. In such a way that, you know, I'd had that moment with One Direction and then coming out on my own. So there's a lot of pressure and a lot of room for like overthinking with all of that. Whereas now it's just I've got a clearer picture in my head of what I want and what I need out of what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just chasing what at the time I think just thought was the right thing to do, and maybe even at times the easier thing to do. Do you know what I mean? But the longer I sat with it, I'm just like, I've got to do what I love, because I've been lucky enough to have experienced all the highs of One Direction. It's not really anything left to achieve. So on my own, it's more about just following my heart. But I will say I'm lucky that I've got, you know, I've got a fan base that are willing to listen to what I like and kind of really trust in my instincts like that. And that's a nice feeling, because you don't want to go into the second record feeling like you're alienating.
Yeah.
And I don't have that same fear actually.
Yeah, I think what you've come out with is just a really amazing guitar record.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that what you set out to make?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it was what I set out to make on the first record, but I just wasn't brave enough. So, like, there was definitely so many times across that record where I worried about alienating the fans, and I thought, you know, let's put these crossover songs on there on the first record that kind of feel like some of the One Direction stuff. But actually, as I said, this record, it just felt, maybe it was confidence. I just felt more confident in doing what I wanted to do. But no, it makes me proud you saying that. I mean, that is the intention. And it's more in line of what I like listening to. Yeah. So to have made a record like that, I'm not going to lie, I've not really been in this situation before. Don't get me wrong, I loved the One Direction stuff. And immensely proud, but it's easier to kind of disassociate when you're part of a group like that. And I loved singing those songs, but it's never really, this is the first time in my career where I've got an album that I actually would listen to every track on it. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very authentically you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice feeling.
Exactly what you want to kind of do as an artist. Let's talk about the title then, Faith in the Future. When did that come to you?
It was a weird one. It was like, I want to say, maybe like 6 months before lockdown. I had this phrase, and it just kind of, for whatever reason, and I'm not really that, what's the word? I'm not really that like hippie like that in terms of like having a phrase that would speak to you. But it did for whatever reason. And I always liked the idea of it, and I like the alliteration in it and all that kind of shit. But it wasn't until kind of lockdown happened that it felt kind of appropriate to put out a positive message like that. But also I put it out on my Twitter just to gauge kind of a reaction without any context and just to gauge a reaction to the phrase. And I just felt this power from it. So it almost feels like it decided itself. There's me getting a little bit hippie again.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
The fan's going to help you decide it.
Yeah.
So much of this album feels like it's kind of a love letter to your fans, really. You know, the track opener, The Greatest. I mean, what an opener, first of all. You know, that energy, the positivity. But yeah, it's basically just like a big thank you to your fans, right?
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to do that in the context of a song, and also done not in a cheesy way, I don't think. You know, because sometimes when you do a concept like that, it can feel a little bit eggy or a little bit contrived or whatever, but I think we've done it in a really authentic way. That song was originally written, not necessarily as the album opener, but as the tour opener. So as a lot throughout this process, I've always got the live show at the front of my mind, but we went through different times with the different songs of just really trying to visualize different moments in that show and trying to create them, you know, just through like imagination, obviously. And I think straight away from the off, Fred Ball did it goes way beyond my musical comprehension, but really, really clever kind of opener. It really slaps you around the face.
Yeah.
And you can imagine in the context of a live show, that's what you want from that first look.
Yeah, I can imagine you walking out on stage playing that song first of all. It has that feel about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also the fact that it's not only is it going to be the opener, but it's also straight away from the off a kind of, you know, a message or a concept about the connection between me and the fans, and that's also a nice way to start the show.
Yeah. I love that the first few tracks on the album all have that energy about them. Written All Over Your Face is my favourite.
Oh, nice
Something
one. Nice.
very Arctic Monkeys about it. Are they a big influence on you?
Massively. I mean, they're only from down the road from where I grew up, Sheffield, like 20 minutes away. It's dead close. So massive part of growing up. But I was saying before, it's funny how these things work. It's not as if you go into these sessions, you know, trying to replicate or even drawing too much inspiration. They kind of just happen naturally because, you know, they've had an effect on you over years. And I think subconsciously, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's probably my favourite lyricist, Alex Turner, like many people's. So yeah, that's a song that straight away I can picture Rob Harvey, who's a brilliant lyricist, but also brilliant with melody as well. He sang out that melody, and from the off, it kind of just, once we had that lead part, I'm not going to say the song wrote itself, but it kind of really set the tone for the kind of style that we wanted to do.
Yeah, I absolutely love that one.
When somebody told me I would change, I used to hide behind a smile. When somebody
I feel like Bigger Than Me is another song that just encapsulates the fan base as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was a bit of a journey, that song, conceptually, because I don't think I could have written that song on the last record, and the reason being, because I've now got some tour experience under my belt, and I know what those shows look like, and I know what those shows feel like. I think there was a certain way that I've carried myself for so long, you know, and I like to feel grounded and not, you know, act like I do the job that I do at times. Sometimes I shy away from that because I just like normality. I like my own stuff, you know. But that was a moment where I'd seen these shows and I could see, A, how important it was to me, but also how important it was to those people in the crowd at the moment. And we share that moment together, and it you know, it transcends me and them, and there's just this beautiful kind of synergy in the room. So it was just about capturing that idea.
And the chorus on it, oh my goodness me. That's the sing-along moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone arms in the air. I feel like I can already hear crowds singing it. Have you road tested it?
I've done it a couple of times. I'm not gonna lie, it's fucking hard to sing though. Like,
Really?
Yeah, like I need to think
One of
these
those,
things
you need a little
through.
thing after.
Yeah. But no, it was written with that intention. It was something I thought I lacked on the first record, of having that real big soaring chorus sing-along moment. It's kind of like one of those choruses that's like unavoidable. It'll eventually eat away at you, you know what I mean? And I think we did that with Bigger Than Me. It felt like the right first look out of the album because, you know, it's maybe, I think it was 2 years or 3 years since my last record, so I wanted something to feel ambitious from the out.
Which it definitely does.
Thank you.
I know you wrote this with Rob Harvey, who obviously some people know from the music,
Yeah.
being the singer and the lead guitarist, but I mean, he's worked with The Streets, he's toured with Kasabian. his musical experience, I mean, has that really influenced the sonics of the record?
Massively, and you know, these people that I was lucky enough to work with on this record that I didn't potentially on the first, just made such a massive impression on me for multiple different reasons. Like even just the fact that Rob wanted to write with me at first was like dead cool, and I was excited about that. And he's a brilliant writer and does a lot of different stuff, but he definitely brought a lot to the table. And he's someone who understands, obviously he comes from such a credible core musical background, but he also understands pop music, and he creates this really interesting hybrid between the two.
And the producer on this as well, obviously Mike Crossley, who's worked with, I mean, he's the guy really, for guitar music, you know, the 1975, Wolf Alice, Youngblood, the list, I mean, we'll be here all day with me. I mean, how important has he been to the process?
Yeah, he worked on a couple of tracks on the record. He's one of those people that actually, from the off of meeting him, you're kind of in awe of him. He's someone who lives and breathes music. And I feel like everyone we bump into in these circles, they're passionate about music, but other people that you meet, they just have a different kind of intensity. I went round to his place for the first time and he showed me, he didn't actually show me, he just told me, so he could have been bullshitting. But he had this like robotic drummer. I kid you not, right?
What?
And it like, obviously it didn't have like a head or like that, but it was just like arms. Robotic arms, and he can like program it on computer, so you get this clever hybrid of like live drums, but they're not really live because they're done by a computer. Kind of mad shit.
Oh my god, that's probably the future, isn't it?
It sounds like
it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
You give until it's gone away. Just tell yourself you gotta know the day.
The next track is called Lucky Again, and the guitar lines on this I absolutely love. So tell me about how this one was made.
That's how it started, actually. Jay Moon was a really great young writer I did some good stuff with. He started with that guitar riff, and from the off, it just kind of feels kind of like hypnotic, really, to me, the first time I heard it. And again, that kind of set the tone for the rest of the song. And I think by this time, you know, you've had on the album, chronologically, you've had songs like Written All Over Your Face, you've had songs like Bigger Than Me, that these big moments. I think it's important to have, I'm not going to call it easy listening, because maybe that's, you know, a bit offensive to the song, but it kind of sits in that world where, you know, I can picture with that song, you got the windows down in car, it's one of those tunes.
The road trip number,
yeah,
isn't it?
definitely.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And with Jay Moon, I know you recorded it in London, but this album you've kind of written and recorded and listened to mixes all around the world, right?
Yeah, a lot of like the post-production stuff was done like while I was on tour.
Was that hectic or?
It was. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm very good at kind of saying, yeah, it's a good idea at the time, and then you get there and you're like, fucking hell. But no, it was challenging at times, just because the tour schedule was so manic. But there's also something about being right in the middle of those live moments and then making decisions on the music. You're almost being influenced by the shows in the production notes you're giving, which for me, that's the kind of record I want to make anyway.
That must have been really useful, actually. It's almost like as you're making the songs, you're kind of like, that's going to be that moment in the set, that's going to be the new closer, that's going to be that.
Definitely, because otherwise you're just relying on imagination or experience, but actually I was living it through that time, so it did help kind of piecing those parts together.
Where do you find inspiring to write? Obviously you wrote some in London, but where else do you kind of go? Where it kind of ignites a little bit of creativity in you?
I think, listen, it's all dependent on people in the room, how you feel on the day, how much you've actually got to write about at that time. But my best songs have been written, in my opinion, or at least the ones that I've enjoyed the most have been in the UK. You just have this feeling of home here anyway. So it's not that I don't feel that when I'm writing in LA, but you do feel this very mild disconnect. And where I did things a little bit differently on this record is, instead of, you know, booking a studio out Monday to Friday, 12 till 6, when you do it that way, it kind of feels like work.
Yeah.
And you know, you get in at midday and you know that you've got to get out there by 6 p.m. and it kind of stains the air. It changes the way that you create. So I was lucky enough to have a couple of writing trips where we just book a house and there'd be like a studio in the house. And it meant that we could, you know, over a weekend, write when we felt like writing.
Yeah.
And as opposed to really trying to search out for those moments, you just wait until you feel creative, and then someone will inspire someone else to be creative, and before you know it, you're writing a song. And I actually, in terms of authenticity, I really enjoyed that into
Yeah.
the writing process because it just feels really, really natural.
Yeah. When do you think you wrote mostly then? Would it be at night?
I'd say on those trips definitely.
Yeah.
Or at least start late afternoon. But the first day I went with when we did a writing camp with Joe Cross, Theo Hutchcraft, Dave Snedden, and it was us as a 4. And the first day I got there, I think we were going to write that night, but I didn't really know anyone personally that well. So we just went to the pub that evening.
Always the best way.
It's a smart move, isn't it? And we spoke about music almost like how I talk to my mates about football, and there was just so much fucking passion. And it actually I felt like we really understood each other musically before we'd even started the session. So those things, I think they do make an impact on what you create, definitely.
Is someone like Joe Cross a bit of a hero of yours?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
'Cause
Again,
he's of mine. I mean, the Cortinas, what a band.
serious, yeah, and definitely another one of those moments where I started to realise that maybe I'm in the right place. If these kind of people want to write with me now, that's really cool. And he, again, someone who I really learned a lot from. These kind of people, you can kind of just watch from afar and just try and take in as much as you possibly can. But yeah, just proud to work with proper artists. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting actually, looking through the track listing and then looking through the people you've collaborated with. And it's not just songwriters, is it? It's actually mostly artists. Was that a conscious decision?
It was, and this is not, I always worry about saying, this is each to their own, and I'm not judging anyone for anyone's way of finding these songs, but through my own experience, sometimes with a professional songwriter, let's call them that maybe aren't, they're a professional songwriter and they write hits for a living, that's their livelihood. So to ask them to go in the room and we want to write an album track, sometimes those are difficult things to ask for, because at the back of the mind they're thinking, but if we shape this like a single, who knows? And all of a sudden, again, you're changing the song. Whereas with artists, they completely understand that, this is a 16-track album, track 11 is as important as track 1.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you get that kind of depth within the music. That's where I feel like there's been a massive turning point for me as a creator and writing with these people is you just see there's so much attention to detail that every song deserves, and you get that with artists.